afternoon to you, and thank you so much for being with us today. It is exactly 3 p.m. East African time here in Nairobi, Kenya. I trust that your day is going on well. Good morning, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and joining us from today being the 7th of December 2022. So today I'll just bring you the latest news from across the continent of Africa. And we start with some news that you already touched on in our earlier shows, but I'll just like to bring us up to date with it anyway, because it is a developing story, and that is from the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there were violent clashes in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Tuesday between Congolese soldiers and the M23 rebel movement, local sources said, as the rebels said they were ready to disengage. Congolese troops engaged the rebel group outside Buiza, some 40 kilometers north of provincial capital in Goma, according to the sources, as the violence sent local people fleeing and brought the neighboring town of Kichanga to a standstill. The latest unrest in the conflict-racked country comes a week after an attack blamed on M23 slightly further to the north in eastern North Kivu province left around 300 people dead. Almost all of them were civilians. The group denied being behind the massacre, blaming stray bullets for the deaths of just 8 civilians. On Tuesday, the group issued a statement saying it was ready to countenance a withdrawal from territory it had seized, a key demand made by Luanda at peace talks last month with neighboring Rwanda, which saw a truce agreement unlocked. He said the leader of the M23 said that the M23 group was ready to start disengagement and withdraw. The ceasefire was scheduled to take place on November 25th to be followed by a pullout from the seized territory by M23 2 days later. This did not happen, but Kanyuka stated that the M23 group would maintain the ceasefire even though it was not represented at the peace summit. He added the group wanted a meeting with the East African Regional Force to discuss ceasefire implementation. Kinshasa accuses Rwanda of providing M23 with support, something that the UN experts and US officials have also pointed to in the recent months. But Kigali in turn has accused the DRC of collusion with the FDLR, a former Rwandan Hutu rebel group established in the DRC after the genocide of the Tutsi community in 1994 in Rwanda. And 53 armed groups from the Democratic Republic of Congo that met in Kenya for the third East African community-led peace process have agreed to lay down their arms as Kinshasa finds ways to address their grievances, amongst them the removal of foreign armed groups from the country. This was one of the resolutions made in the final communique read out during the close of the week-long meeting at Safari Park Hotel here in Nairobi, noting that the process of finding lasting peace in the region will take time. The facilitator of the process, former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta, said the resolutions arrived at during the meeting will be seeking to address the issues that can be addressed within the short term. Mr. Kenyatta then made a personal request to the armed groups to talk to their sons back at home to stop taking advantage of the situation to sexually assault women. A follow-up meeting will be held in Goma and Bunia between January and February, where the progress of the resolutions will be assessed. All the armed groups represented in the meeting signed the communique alongside the facilitator and his 2 envoys, Kenya's Macharia Kamau and DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi's special envoy, Professor Sergei Shibangu, as a sign of commitment to implementing the resolutions earlier. Mr. Kenyatta thanked the East African Community Secretariat for addressing participants' concerns over allowances. Mr. Kenyatta expressed hope that the M23 group will honor the requirements of the Luanda process, among them ending current hostilities existing from Ruchuru, Kiwanja and Banagana before he can meet with them. And still staying with our story, Rwanda's foreign minister has accused the international community of exacerbating the crisis in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, plagued by armed groups after the United States urged Kigali to stop by any support of the rebels. In a Sunday call with Rwandan President Paul Kagame, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken made it clear that all external support to non-state armed groups in the DRC must end, including Rwanda's support for M23. Fighting in eastern DRC between government forces and rebels from the M23 former Tutsi rebellion has heightened tensions with neighboring Rwanda, with the DRC accusing the country of encouraging the militia. Kigali has always denied any kind of involvement. We head over to Nigeria. And in a bloody retaliation after losing more than 56 fighters to the Iswap group, Boko Haram terrorists on Tuesday attacked a special location of their rivals, killing 55 people, including 33 wives of Iswap members. The incident happened in Sambisa Forest in northeast Borno State, where Boko Haram and Iswap terrorists have been digging in against the Nigerian troops in a bid to acquire and control territories. The Boko Haram fighters killed the women to avenge the deaths of the members, including a notorious commander, Malam Abubakar, in renewed fighting on December 3rd, 2022. Since December 3rd, Ali Ngulde, a top Boko Haram leader in charge of Mandara Mountain, has led hundreds of fighters armed with weapons from Mandara Mountain to wage war against Iswap in Sambisa Forest. The attack began with a failed negotiation initiated by Jama'at al-Sunnah lead Dawer, who is from Boko Haram terrorist group, in which they indicated to the Islamic State of West African province Iswap that they were ready to surrender themselves to the Iswap leadership. Sources reported on Tuesday that, unknown to the Iswap group, Ngunde and his team had staged an ambush against them in which at least 12 of their members were killed in Yue, while others escaped with bullet wounds. In the aftermath of the encounters, Boko Haram members seized 4 Toyota Hilux trucks mounted with weapons belonging to their rivals and burned another. Shortly after the victory, the Boko Haram insurgents mobilized more fighters to attack more Iswap positions in Ukuba, Ara, Sabil, Huda and Ferusi, killing around 23 more fighters. A few hours later, a top Iswap leader, Bana Chingori, called for a declaration of war and led a column of fighters in reprisal attacks on the Boko Haram in Farisu. In the ensuing attack, Iswap killed 15 Boko Haram terrorists, including Munzir, a unit commander, and seized 7 motorcycles from them. Look at that. And then the latest from Ethiopia. The country has redeployed federal troops to quell violence in the populous Oromia region, which has been stricken by repetitive attacks by armed groups. Amara militants have been blamed for the latest attacks that have left dozens dead and thousands displaced in Enga, Guter and Kiramu border towns in East Woliga zone bordering Amara region. However, the Amara community, who are minority in the area, blame a group affiliated with the Oromo OLA rebels for the deadly attacks. Among the dead in Karamu are local judge and members of the regional police force. Local authorities say there is an urgent need for humanitarian aid as roadblocks put by armed groups have hampered movement in the region. Residents have been telling harrowing stories about the atrocities, blaming the government for failing to protect them. A yet to be unauthenticated graphic video showing 2 decapitated heads of alleged rebels went viral online, sparking protests in Oromia on Tuesday. The state-funded Ethiopian's Human Rights Commission says it is investigating the atrocities committed in the region. The national government has not commented on the attacks, which have been condemned by opposition groups. Violence in Oromia, the home region of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, has been overshadowed in the last 2 years by the war in Tigray. The South Sudan Opposition Alliance, SSOA, an umbrella group of 10 opposition political parties, has urged the government to urgently intervene and defuse the ongoing hostilities in the northern oil-producing Upper Nile state. International ceasefire monitors based in the country who are assessing the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement reported on Tuesday that there were renewed fighting between the National Army and the opposition forces in Maiwut area. The Ceasefire Transitional Security Arrangement Monitoring and Verification Mechanism, CTSAMVM, also said there were renewed fighting reported in Fashoda area. It is not It did not provide details regarding casualties, but said it was concerned that these incidents might pose a real threat to the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. Local media reported that countless numbers of people were killed in the Fashoda clashes. Egyptian lawyers have reportedly escalated their rare protests in the capital Cairo and elsewhere nationwide over requirement for a new electronic system to collect taxes. In a live stream video on Facebook on Monday, prominent pro-Islamist lawyer Montasser Al-Zayed showed dozens of lawyers gathered at the Bar Association's main building in central Cairo, chanting slogans against the new system. The chants mainly reiterated the lawyers' rejection of registering in the new electronic system for collecting taxes as per instructions by the Finance Ministry. The Egyptian Tax Authority published a statement on the 27th November requesting all investors, including lawyers, artists and doctors who handle direct business transactions with consumers, to register for an electronic invoice system before the 15th of December. The electronic tax system is part of the government efforts to digitize financial transactions and end unregulated economic markets. Lawyer Tarek El-Wadi said in a Facebook post on Monday that Egyptian lawyers were making history in defense of their legitimate rights as they staged the biggest peaceful protest in Egypt over the past 9 years. Head over back to Nigeria, and anger and disappointment is how many Nigerians are feeling after presidential candidate had a rare media engagement during an appearance at Chatham House, a UK-based think tank, on Monday. Bola Tinubu, a two-time governor of Lagos State, who is running for the governing All Progressive Congress APC, and which I think is the ruling party right now in February polls, has avoided the Nigerian media since winning the party's ticket, delegating a retinue of spokespeople to speak on his behalf. He has also shunned presidential debates and town hall meetings with other candidates in the lead up to the elections. And as a result, many who had turned in to the heavily publicized appearance in London had high hopes of hearing Mr. Tinubu answer key policy questions. He was asked how he would deal with widespread insecurity in Nigeria, and how he would solve the country's huge unemployment rate, and how he would stop oil theft in the Niger Delta. And thankfully, these questions were being asked by the journalists inside the packed hall, but many were stunned when Mr. Tinubu elected his aides to respond on his behalf, a departure from the norm at the institute popular with those seeking elective offices in Nigeria. A spokesman for the candidate of the main opposition, People's Democratic Party, PDP, described it as an abdication of responsibility, while many others said it confirmed Mr. Tinubu's lack of physical and mental rigor to lead Africa's most populous country. Okay. And then we go to Tanzania. Hundreds of children with special needs in the country are set to enroll in boarding schools after the government relocated money meant for Independence Day celebrations to build dormitories. Some $445,000 had been set aside for Friday's 61st Independence Day festivities, but that will now be spent on improving schools. President Samia Suluhu said the dormitories will be built in 8 rural special needs schools to help many learners, some of them who walk daily between 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers to attend classes. The government said the move was aimed at improving the learning environment for children with special needs. And a Sudanese businessman linked to a scandal facing South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has broken his silence for the first time. Sky News has reported at the center of the scandal is the alleged theft of $580,000 in cash from the president's farm, Phala, which had been handed over to pay for livestock. The businessman mentioned in an expert's report as having handed over the money to Hazim Mustafa. Some doubt was cast over whether the purchase was made, but he has now told Sky News that he paid the sum in cash to buy 20 buffaloes in 2019, but that he did not know that they belonged to Mr. Ramaphosa. The panel that looked into the events surrounding the theft of the money from the sale concluded that the president had a case to answer. The panel also said there was substantial doubt that this sale of the animals took place, noting that neither the lodge manager nor the Sudanese national had confirmed this was what had happened. The ruling African National Congress has so far rallied behind Mr. Ramaphosa and urged him to fight against calls for him to resign. Very well. The UN humanitarian coordinator for Somalia warned on Tuesday the country was undergoing a catastrophic emergency due to the most recent drought in the nation's history. Speaking during a joint meeting of the League of Arab States and the United Nations, Adam Abdelmula said Somalia was suffering from its 5th consecutive failed rainy season, with a 6th failed season predicted again for next year. He outlined the situation, which has left nearly half of the Somalian population affected by drought. He added 6.7 million people were expected to face high levels of acute food insecurity. A rare famine declaration could be made soon, the first significant one anywhere in the world since Somalia's famine a decade ago. As the world is gripped by food insecurity, Somalia, a country of 15 million people shaking off its past as a failed state, can be considered the end of the line. And we head over back to Ethiopia, and the country has restored power supply to Mekelle, the capital of the northern Tigray state, where federal troops fought rebels in a 2-year civil war that ended last month. Residents in the city are now enjoying full resumption of electricity after supply was disconnected for more than a year, sources have confirmed to the media. The state-affiliated Fana broadcast quoted a spokesman of the state-owned Ethiopian Electric Power as saying that power had been restored after repair on a high-voltage line. State-run telecommunications firm Ethio Telecom has also restored services in Shire, a town and surrounding areas. Families living abroad have told the media that they finally managed to call their loved ones after 2 years. Power and telecommunication services were disrupted after war broke out in the Tigray region in November of 2020. The head of the Ugandan Medical Association, a grouping of Ugandan medics, has told the media that he has not resigned, despite reports that he had agreed to step aside. Dr. Samuel Odongo Oledo says he committed no crime in kneeling before President Yoweri Museveni to ask him to stand again for the presidency in 2026. Dr. Oledo says he only agreed that the association's ethics committee carry out investigations into his conduct. This process should take a week. A video showing him with a group of mostly student doctors kneeling before President Museveni last week has been the subject of online conversations in Uganda for days. The surgeon says that he was a card-carrying member of the ruling National Resistance Movement Party before he was elected president of the Medical Association, and all his colleagues have always been aware of his political affiliation. But Dr. Herbert Luswata, the association's Secretary General, insists that their group is non-partisan and that the president agreed to step aside. Dr. Luswata said that many of the doctors in the group who knelt before the president had not been informed of what they were going to participate in and were caught unawares. Although President Museveni, who is currently serving his 6th term in office, has not yet announced whether he will run in 2026, several groups have already endorsed him as their candidate of choice. And then the latest from Mali, the transition leader, Colonel Assimi Goïta, says the future of the UN mission in Mali, MINUSMA, will depend on a change of strategy and improved relations with the country's army. Colonel Goïta tweeted that he had held discussions with the United Nations head of peacekeeping operations, Jean-Pierre Lacroix, who has been on a 2-day tour of Mali ahead of the renewal of MINUSMA's mandate. The state-linked Lesso quoted Mr. Lacroix as saying that this was about ensuring there was an agreement between Mali and the United Nations so that when the time comes, the recommendations at the level of the UN Security Council are in line with the objectives of the Malian authorities. UN peacekeepers have been in the country since 2013, but relations with Bamako have recently deteriorated. Several countries, including Germany and Cote d'Ivoire, have announced plans to withdraw from the mission to scale down their presence. Sudanese military leader Abdel Fattah al-Burhan has said that the army will relinquish power as soon as civilian political groups in this in the country reached an agreement on the formation of a new transitional government. Parties that signed the 5th November Framework Agreement, which paves way for the formation of a new civilian-led transitional government, are expected to set up committees to work on a new constitution for the country. General Buran said. He said the timeline for formation of a new government would depend on how fast civilian groups can reach an agreement on outstanding issues. He insisted that the military saved the country on 25th of October last year when it toppled a civilian-led coalition government in a coup. General Buran spoke on Tuesday to several pan-Arab news channels, including Al Jazeera, Sky News Arabia, and Al Arabia TV. The latest Sudanese political agreement was signed by the military junta and a faction of the former ruling civilian bloc Forces for Freedom and Change Central Council and allied political groups. While widely welcomed by the country's international partners, the deal has been rejected by powerful pro-democracy protest organizers known as Resistance Committee and key pro-military and Islamist groups. And then we head back to Nigeria. Nigeria's central bank has limited weekly over-the-counter cash withdrawals by individuals and corporates to 100,000 naira, that is equivalent to 225 US dollars, and 500 naira respectively, that is equivalent to 1,125 US dollars. This is in line with its policy to promote cashless transactions. It said it comes days after the West African country launched new banknotes. In a circular, the central bank fixed the maximum daily withdrawal from ATMs at 20,000 naira with a weekly limit of 100,000 naira. It also directed that only denominations of 200 naira and below be loaded on ATMs. Withdrawals through a point-of-sale system used mostly to pay for goods will be limited at 20,000 naira. The new restrictions will come to effect on the 9th of January. So you have time to shop for Christmas and use as much as you want, Nigerians, okay? And now we end our bulletin from Somalia, and army and allied militias have pushed Al-Shabaab fighters out of strategic towns in the center of the country that had been held by the Islamist militant group for 6 years. In recent months, the country has taken control of dozens of villages and towns. The combination of American airstrikes, African Union troops, the Somali army and allied militia are causing a serious problems for Al-Shabaab. The mayor of Adan Yabal said the town was taken without encountering any resistance. The jihadist group has used it as a training base and a hub for its operations across the central Somalia. After President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud's election in May, he declared all-out war against Al-Shabaab. Now, he says the effort to clear the group outside of Hirshabelle and Galmudug states is in its final stages. Despite losing territory, the militant group has been carrying out frequent deadly bombings, raids, especially in the capital, Mogadishu. And you are now up to date. It is about 22 minutes past 3 p.m. Here in Nairobi. So I just want to because I just have a few minutes left, just jump into a few news items here very quickly, maybe one or two. This story of doctors going to kneel before President Museveni, I don't know, I don't even want to get into that right now. I think, you know, Ugandans, I don't know. Let's just leave that there. But this story of Tinubu, a front runner in next year's elections, in fact, the flag bearer of the ruling party in Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, he was in Chatham House. You know, Chatham House, I think it's an institution that is respected, and very serious business takes place there, and they invite leaders from across the world to give talks there or their opinions about certain things. And then usually there comes a time where journalists or some designated people, you know, pose questions to the speaker of the day. So he had an opportunity to go there. You know, Nigeria is readying itself for its elections next year. And so I guess after he finished saying, and before I even get to that, Tinubu does not talk to the media in Nigeria. I guess he does not answer questions. He does not. He's not a fan of the media for whatever reason. So this was a great opportunity for Nigerians. And you know, he was supposed to be appearing on another debate that was organized by one of the media houses in Nigeria, and he did not bother to attend. So Nigerians, since he was given this ticket by All Progressive Congress Party, you know, Nigerians have been wanting to hear what his ideas are and what does his manifesto look like. What is his agenda? What will he be able to do differently from what President Muhammadu Buhari is doing right now? How will he handle the murky issue of security in Nigeria? How will he address the oil, and why are we having a lot of siphoning on this oil, and why do we have this amount of oil and we don't benefit so much from it as a country? The important things, you know, that really matter to the people of Nigeria, the inflation, all of these things, right? So he's been avoiding the media, and he's been avoiding every opportunity that he has heard that he could have, you know, spoken into his issues and perhaps, you know, made it clear for the people of Nigeria and made his case as to why they should elect him or not come February, because that is when the elections are meant to be happening. So Tinubu finds his way into Chatham House, and there, after he's done his presentation, now questions were being posed. And among those questions that were being asked is how would he deal with the widespread insecurity in Nigeria, and how would he solve the country's huge unemployment rate, and then how would he stop health theft in the Niger Delta? We know that is also an issue there. Very important and pertinent questions, right? That you would think a presidential candidate of such a country in a leading party, ruling party for that matter, would actually have something to say, you know, in regards to these basic issues that Nigeria would want to hear a presidential candidate of a leading party, you know, respond to. And guess what he did? He chose one of the many aides that he walks around with and others to respond to this on his, he elected aides to respond on his behalf. That is what it is. That is not what happens at the Chatham House. You give your presentation, you stand there for the questions, and you respond for the questions. But Tinubu decided, I don't talk to the media in Nigeria. I don't give press conferences. I don't talk to people at all. I don't know how he campaigns, to be honest with you. So he said, I'm not going to talk to you here. You know, I'm not going to respond to your questions because these questions are being posed by journalists and not even Nigerian journalists. So I think this was a letdown. How do you, a presidential candidate in such a platform, that you agreed to participate and you understand how the standard procedure in Chatham House, I'm sure you were briefed properly, so you knew after your presentation you're supposed to respond to some questions or engage in some sort of conversations. And he refused to do that. He picked some of his aides to respond to these questions. And this is a person who wants to lead Nigeria. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that he's the one who was given, you know, the ticket for the All Progressive Congress, because we know how President Buhari himself has been handling these issues that Tinubu is now being asked how he's planning to handle them, because these are real problems, these are real issues that Nigerians would want to know how a leading presidential candidate was going to answer these questions and was going to deal with these questions. So Nigerians felt very, very angered, and they really had so much I would be angered. I would be disappointed. You don't put yourself in a position and then you can't respond in the manner that you're supposed to. You pick an aide to answer on your behalf and you're present there. I don't know how this is supposed to make sense, but that is Bola Tinubu for you. So Nigerians were disappointed and they were angered, and I guess there you go. You have your answer there for yourself. So I guess you will know how to how to choose your leaders there. But I felt that was really a disservice even to the party itself, and that was a disservice even to the people of Nigeria and others who probably believe, and I'm sure, who believe in that party, and they really want to hear what their leader has to say. And if you do not want to talk to the media or to respond to questions, Mr. Tinubu, you shouldn't have showed up at Chatham House, because that is what normally happens there, Chatham House in London. That is what normally happens there. Any talk I've watched, I've seen, any engagement, usually comes to a point where you have to respond to questions. So if you knew you are incapable of doing that, and you just want to, have your aide respond to that, and you're present, what is that? That is disrespectful even to the people of Nigeria. That is disrespectful even to the party that gave you the mandate to run using the ticket. And it's not fair at all. And if you're so incapable of doing such a minute thing, how are you going to lead the country of Nigeria? How? With all these issues that is plaguing Nigeria, how are you going to be in charge of that country? I mean, sometimes. Anyway. Okay. So now some good news from Ethiopia. Electricity has been restored in that part of Tigray, that part of Nigeria, and telecommunication services. I think that is a good thing. I think Ethiopia is making some good progress after that ceasefire and the coming together and the disarmament agreement that was done on the 2nd of November, I believe. There has been some remarkable progress being made. I see the government is trying to meet its side of commitment and the other sides too. But even as that is happening, there seems to be some disquiet. And we have repeatedly, while having this conversation about Nigeria, talked about this. You know, it was not only the TPLF that was at loggerheads with the government. The Oromia, the OLA, Oromo Liberation Army, I believe, they also seem to have had a bit of a disquiet as far as, dealing with the government of Ethiopia is concerned. And our worry, while we've been handling this matter, is that it would have been prudent to have everybody on the table so that all the stakeholders and, all these people who are involved in this bloody 2 years war could have a chance to speak and to find solutions together moving forward. But the Ethiopian government was not keen, I guess, of having this other group. Instead, it was keen to engage with the TPLF. And we know at some point the OLA were fighting alongside TPLF. There's a time they joined efforts together to fight against the government forces. So government chose to go with TPLF, which I think was the more powerful of them in the group, and it has engaged, and it seems to have found a solution, and they're working towards a proper resolving this problem until the end. But the OLM and rebels have now been left here, and they have been trying to raise some kind of attention, I guess, towards them. When you look at the things that they have been doing since the signing of this peace deal, since the mediation process started in October, I guess. So they have been doing certain things, and now the Ethiopian government has redeployed federal troops to quell violence in the populous Oromia region, which has been stricken by repetitive attacks by armed groups. I think the leadership under Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed might want to consider to engage with this group and others, if at all there are others, and find out what exactly do you want. The same way you sat down and engaged with TPLF, as difficult as that was, because that was not very easy on the part of the Ethiopian government. It had to take a lot of convincing. But Prime Minister Abiy, as much as you did that, and we see that has brought some good progress so far, and the people of Ethiopia from that region and the rest of Ethiopia are able to now start rebuilding their lives, and now you can look into other matters as the process continues. But you do have a section of your population that is still feeling discontent, that has some disquiet, that still feels it is going to, get some arms and continue fighting and causing chaos, as we see they're doing right now. And it's interesting because this is the home region of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. So I don't know the reasons why the Prime Minister does not, and the government does not want to engage with the OLA rebels. I don't know why. But I think it will be nice to just listen. I know nice is not what you use when you're looking at a military situation. But I think these people should have come to the table while you're having the mediation process with TPLF. But since that mediation, that ship has already left the dock, now can we start reaching out? And because we don't want this to ferment and become anything bigger than it already is. If you can just reach out, it doesn't hurt sometimes to hear, what is it do you want? What is your problem? How do you feel marginalized? Because a lot of these issues and conflicts, as we have been seeing over the shows that we've been doing, emanate from a section of the population feeling marginalized and feeling as if there are some acute levels of inequality that they are experiencing as a people, as a community. So if you could just have a conversation, just go there with an open mind, the government, listen to your people, hear them out. I'm not saying you agree with how they choose to engage and do what they're doing, but just go there with an open, mind and just hear them out and see if whatever issues they have are legitimate, it is something that the government can work on addressing, or what is the problem. I think we can avert this before it gets farther than what we saw in the conflict in the Tigray region. That was unnecessary, and that would have been averted. So if we start another standoff again in this conflict that is brewing now, then we would have made steps back. So I think engaging at this point will make things easier for everybody. Unnecessary deaths will be averted. Unnecessary loss of properties and destruction will be averted before it gets farther. And this is not to encourage the OLA to engage in these manners. Now they're attacking and they're killing people and they're causing mayhem. It is unnecessary. And if they have issues, they should also learn to engage with the government diplomatically. Sometimes it only takes a conversation to have your problems heard and solved. You don't have to take up arms and fight. I wish they would also perhaps implore this manner of diplomacy. Why do you have to fight? And it's not like you want to leave Ethiopia. This is your country. This is your government. You can engage. You can reach out and say, Mr. Prime Minister and the President and the government of Ethiopia, we have some things that we feel we want to talk to the government about, and we have some issues, or we have some, whatever it is, that is causing you to feel as though carrying arms and fighting the government is the right thing to do. If you carry arms and fight the government, then you cannot fight and win against the government. The government will fight you back, because if you come with aggression, the government will not come there clapping for you. You'll be met with the same force and even worse. Ask TPLF, they will tell you. So the best way, even for you, OLA, and there are a myriad of issues. I think a few times that we've had this conversation with members from that region, they too have some deep-seated issues that they would want to be heard. But you can't want to be heard, yet you're coming with this level of aggression. You must come in a manner that you are willing and ready to talk. And you can only do that without the use of violence, without the use of force, without carrying up arms. It's unnecessary, spilling blood for words. All those people who have been murdered in the Tigray region, all the lives that we've lost, all the loss of properties, was that even necessary? So if you could learn from what happened there, because your fight is different. Your fight is different. You're not fighting to leave Ethiopia. You want your voice to be heard. You want your issues to be solved because you are still a community within Ethiopia and that is your country. Unless you're saying you want to move and form your own country, then that's a different story. But those are not the issues that I've heard when, looking through this conflict. So it will be prudent to use a different manner. Force does not work. We have seen that. It only makes things worse. So reach out to the government, and also the government should be open to hear the OLA or other groups within Ethiopia that are, perhaps are feeling ways about how things are, about the governance and what is happening, and maybe if they feel marginalized or whatever it is that their problem is. I think all the stakeholders should now come. Let's stop these things of picking up arms and fighting. We have enough going on in this continent, silencing the guns in the continent. That was AU's, goal by 2020. 2020 came and passed, and the guns instead have just increased, and the fightings have increased, and there's not been any silencing. And I've not had AU say anything about that. So these interstate wars, I think they're easy to solve, and I hope Eritrea has gone back. Eritrean forces, they've gone back to Eritrea. Isaias Afaki, I hope you've moved your people back to Eritrea. Let Ethiopians solve their own problems without unnecessary interference. I'm just hoping that, both sides can reach out and just have a conversation and hear each other out so that we don't see a repeat of what happened in the Tigray region. That is just my wish. But anyway, I'll stop here for right now. I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you here tomorrow, God willing. Bye-bye for now.